overcome someday. And then that's how it begins. But it says, we walk hand in hand. Everybody on this telecast walks hand in hand, and those at Ashraf walk with you. Madame Rajavi walks with you. The diaspora that meets in Paris walks with you. Community and political leaders around the world walk with you. We shall be free. That's the vision. We shall be free to go forward. We're not going back to the monarchy. We're going to reject this repressive theocracy. We will be free. We are not afraid. Well, we know that. Sadly, history records maybe as many as 40,000 who weren't afraid to die for a cause bigger than themselves. They will be free, and they're certainly not afraid. And we are not alone. Maybe that's more important to the cause of freedom, to the freedom fighters in Ashraf and Iran, than anything else. Growing worldwide support of your mission. Clearly, Senator Torricelli outlined how strongly bipartisan it is in this country, and is becoming more and more global every single day. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. I was very touched by the words of the daughter and the granddaughter, Hannah and Alia, when they talked about their dad, their father, the freedom fighter. We shall overcome one day. God bless all of you.
Thank you very much, Governor Ridge. I cannot help but to have tears in my eyes after your incredible remarks. And you're absolutely right. We shall overcome. And it really does speak to the resiliency of the movement for a free Iran. We really appreciate your wonderful remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, before I move to our next speaker, I'm inspired by the words of Governor, where he was talking to us about political prisoners and the Iranian people. I'm asking my colleagues to give us the view from the West and to the East, because among the Iranian American communities, there are many, many political prisoners who have survived. They have become, as they were victimized by this regime, they are now a survivor, and many of them are now empowered community leader. This is the journey to a free Iran. I want to ask all of my colleagues and all of the participants from the West to the East to hold your hands up in victory as we shall overcome. We shall overcome for a free Iran. I'm seeing Tennessee, I'm seeing Nebraska, I'm seeing New Jersey on the call. Arkansas, thank you so much for joining us. I'm also seeing Ohio, Utah, Oklahoma. Thank you so much for joining us. Excellent. So at this point, that's right, we shall overcome. At this point, it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Ambassador Kenneth Blackwell, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations on Human Rights Commission. And Ambassador Blackwell has joined us on many events and spoken on the issue of human rights and democracy in Iran. Ambassador Blackwell, just yesterday, the State Department blacklisted those responsible for repression and crackdown in Iran, particularly those who were responsible for the massacre that took 1,500 innocent lives in November of 2019. We also have seen the regime that has continued executions, arrests of students, even during the COVID-19 pandemic. Please share with us your thoughts and how you view the situation in Iran.
Hello, it is a delight to be with you all this day, and it's always a pleasure to be with my colleagues, Senator Torricelli and Governor Ridge. And I don't know how to top what they both contributed. So what I will do is join them in a weaving of the emotions and the thoughts, and then talk to you about what I see happening in the United States. But we are at an inflection point in our struggle to bring about fundamental change in Iran. And it's going to take, as Senator Torricelli said, all of us committing to do what we can, where we are, when we can. And that is so, so very important, because it is so easy to get comfortable with the status quo. But those who thirst for freedom and respect of their human dignity in Iran, they understand that the status quo is not good enough and there must be fundamental change. Those of us in the United States, in the country that is at the point of the spear in bringing about the universal force to affect regime change in Iran, must in fact do what we can at every turn, every day, wherever we are. The federal government, the Trump administration, has committed to an all of government approach to really pushing back against a rogue regime that is at the epicenter of international terrorism and disregard for human rights. As was mentioned, just on yesterday, the State Department and the Treasury basically tagged 12 individuals and entities for their violation of human rights and their acts against humanity last year during the uprising in Iran. What we have to do is become an echo chamber to make sure that their voices are amplified in the international community. And there's no bigger megaphone than the government of the United States in the international community. So that means that we must make sure that we show not only the regime, but our government, that there is real meaning to the old Latin saying, e pluribus unum, from the many one. We are, from the youngest ones viewing us today to the most senior of those of us on the call and in this movement. We must show that we are unified and that we are a force that has an expectation that our government will maintain its leadership role in the international community. As one who served on the United Nations Human Rights Commission, I'm very much aware of the fact that many times countries that are on the jury should be in the dock. And that means that what you see on a day in and day out basis are those rogue governments, those gross violators of human rights, who happen to be on the Human Rights Council or on the Security Council or any other body that monitors human rights activities. There's a lot of back scratching. There's a lot of protection of one another among those rogue and gross violators. And so we must say to our government that we have to stay engaged and we have to use every resource that we have to affect change and accountability. And so it's a delight to be with you. We must speak to those students who the State Department talked about on May 10th that were arrested and tortured. And for 26 days, you had complete denial on the part of the regime. But because we were consistent, persistent, and right, we in fact, through our government speaking out, have in fact at least gotten the regime to admit that these folks were arrested. This is a clash between forces of light and forces of darkness. And we must understand that even a pin light can pierce the darkness. And so there is no one on this call within our reach that wants to contribute a pin light of light that can't have an impact on the blanket of darkness that presently is represented by the regime in Iran. And so as we pierce the darkness collectively, I in fact embrace the spirit and the commitment of all of you within this network, within the NCRI coalition, and I in fact lock arms with Mrs. Rajavi and the MEK as we lead the way to make sure that international justice is met and that the regime in Iran is outed. So thank you for all that you do. May the spirit of goodwill and the embrace of the dignity of the human spirit be with us all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Blackwell. Indeed, we will pierce the darkness. I am told by my colleagues we have thousands points of light throughout the United States. Let's take a look across the US again. I want to recognize all of our members, community leaders from California. I want to recognize all of our community leaders from Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. area. Thank you so much for making this wonderful virtual conference a reality. This is the 1,000 points of lights across the US, as Ambassador Blackwell said, as we pierce in the darkness of the Iranian regime. Thank you so much. Let's hold our hand up for victory. Here we are. That's right. We are in the East Coast at this point. Hello, East Coast. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see so many faces. Every one of you have joined us in every rally and every convention we've had. Thank you for being with us in this virtual conference. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, it is a great pleasure to have a performance by two young OIAC millennials, youth chapter of OIAC, who have joined us on this conference with their performance.
We would like to dedicate this piece to the medical staff across the world, especially the ones in Iran, because they are dealing with COVID-19 and the Iranian regime.
you so much. Thank you to Mariam and Milad Hosseini from California and members of OIAC Youth Chapter. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Bishop Dr. Robert Stearns, who have joined us. Dr. Stearns is a founder and executive director of Eagle's Wings, and he's with us here today to share with us his view on U.S. policy and a path forward.
Good day. It is an honor to be with you today. And as a Christian, I greet you in the name of Jesus, whose message is a message of universal love, peace, and justice. And surely we are seeking the peace and justice for the Iranian people. I greet you in the name of Eagle's Wings, our global family who stand with you, and in the name of the Tabernacle, our church in New York, who prays for the justice of your cause and for freedom for the Iranian people. My honor and my thanks to President-elect Maryam Rajavi and the entire National Council of Resistance of Iran for their incredible leadership and your ongoing dedicated work on behalf of the Iranian people and on behalf of freedom everywhere. Tragically, the current Iranian regime continues its repression and gross human rights violations against its own people, preventing the Iranian people from experiencing the freedom and human dignity that is the right of every child of God. The recent COVID-19 crisis has only amplified what we have already known about the leadership of Rouhani and his despotic regime, that they blatantly act against the goodwill of their own people. Just this week, Rouhani falsely boasted that Iran was the third best in the world in the recovery and treatment of coronavirus, when in reality, Iran has experienced an estimated 43,000 deaths from the virus. These statistics have been grossly misrepresented and covered up by the regime to minimize what has actually been taking place within their borders. In addition, as a whole, under the leadership of Rouhani, thousands of lives have been snuffed out through a policy of execution that is the highest in the entire world. And we saw just last week the desecration of the graves of Queen Esther and Mordecai in Iran, which caused so much pain throughout the Jewish and Christian world who revere these saints and leaders. Throughout Rouhani's term, churches have been closed, pastors have been arrested, dissidents have been denied the most basic human rights, including due process of law. The Rouhani regime, this tyrant, he does not represent the Iranian people, and his regime is the main source of instability in that region and supplies millions of dollars to support terrorism in the Middle East and around the world. It is time for him to go. It is time for change. The time for President-elect Maryam Rajavi is now. To echo the proclamation of Dr. Martin Luther King, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Therefore, today, we stand with you in support and in solidarity, and we call upon freedom-loving people everywhere around the world to join with you, to join with President-elect Maryam Rajavi, and to join the Iranian resistance. She has put forth a plan which includes support for a democratic, secular, non-nuclear republic based on gender equality and religious freedom for all. The best course of action for the United States and for other nations around the world is to pursue this policy of firmness and decisiveness against the Iranian regime's repressive and destabilizing policies. And so we pledge to you today, we will hold American elected officials accountable to recognize the right of the Iranian people to have free and democratic process in Iran, and that we will see the removal of this evil regime. To do so holds the promise of literally changing world history. So we stand with you today, the global Christian community, the Eagle's Wings family, the Tabernacle family. We stand with you for a future of the Iranian people that is filled with hope. A hope where our Iranian brothers and sisters and their children, like these beautiful children who just played this beautiful music for all of us, that they can live in their ancient homeland in a free and peaceful country. Thank you for the privilege and honor of standing with you today.
Dr. Stearns, thank you so much for your wonderful remarks. And indeed, it is time for the Iranian regime to go. We really appreciate your continued support, and please send our best greetings to Eagle Wings and your organization. Ladies and gentlemen, as you heard from all of our speakers, the Iranian regime's corruption and funding of terrorism has been a pillar of its strategy. At this point, we have a clip that would give us a much more in-depth view of what this regime has done instead of aiding the Iranian people during the pandemic.
Iran's regime pays IRGC Quds Force proxies 5 times more than Iranian nurses. The mullah's regime claims it is unable to provide medicine and medical facilities to the Iranian people due to U.S. sanctions. Yet over the past 3 months, as coronavirus has spread across Iran and killed many people, the regime continues to pay its proxy militias in Syria and Lebanon in order to continue its regional terrorism and wars. The salary of IRGC militia members in Syria averages about $1,000 a month. According to health ministry officials, the average salary of nurses in Iran is $200 a month. A simple comparison. The $200 monthly salary paid to an Iranian nurse is a fifth of the $1,000 average salary of IRGC mercenaries in Syria. Another comparison. The total salary paid to all nurses in Iran is $30 million a month. The total salary of all IRGC proxy militias in Syria is $70 million a month. Conclusion. The total salary paid to the regime's proxy militias in Syria is more than double the total salary of nurses in Iran. The monthly salary of IRGC proxy militias in Syria is only a fraction of the salary of IRGC mercenaries in different countries. In addition to Syria, the regime pays fixed monthly salaries to its proxy militias in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Afghanistan. The IRGC is currently providing $700 million a year in financial assistance to the Lebanese Hezbollah. Paying salaries to proxy militias is only a portion of the cost of the IRGC's warmongering and terrorism across the globe. Regarding Syria, the mullah's funding of Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship have cost the regime up to $15 billion a year.
And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, the crimes of the Iranian regime against the people of Iran. With that, let me welcome Reverend Dr. Marcus Miranda, President of New York State Chaplain Task Force. Thank you so much for being with us today. He will be discussing Iran's human rights and uprisings.
thank you for having me. And once again, I stand here today to let the Iranian people know that we stand with them. That I, like many Christians around the world, will not forget them and their struggle. Madam Rajavi and the National Council of Resistance of Iran have fought and continue to fight a good fight and are committed to continue to fight for a free Iran. The fight is far from over. However, I do feel we're closer to realizing the dreams of millions in Iran, the dream of equality, freedom of the press, and the dream of religious freedom. The blood of those murdered by this current regime cries out for justice, and we must never forget. In the meantime, this tyrannical regime continues to use threats and imprisonment and political execution as a means to silence the moral majority in Iran. But this will not last for much longer. The uprisings have begun, and the uprisings will not stop. How long will this be allowed to go on? How long will Christians and other minority faith groups have to live in fear of arrest and even death? Even now, during this COVID-19 pandemic, tens of thousands have died from infection, while this corrupt regime continues to withhold basic resources that could save thousands of lives. Under this regime, political prisoners continue to be denied fair trials and due process. Under this regime, human rights violations continue to be at an all-time high. And still today, there are no improvements in regards to the rights of women, the press, and ethnic and religious minorities. How long will this be allowed to go on? The great people of Iran are not asking for anything that's out of this world. All they are asking for is basic human rights, the likes afforded to millions around the world. But this regime will not allow this. Instead, they continue to terrorize those seeking these basic human rights. The current regime in Iran continues to express disdain for the United States and Israel and the rest of the free world. This regime has been at war with the international community for much of over 40 years. They have no intention of making things better for the great people of Iran. But there is an answer, and I'm happy to say this. We've met an incredible woman, a true leader, a woman more than capable of leading Iran into a safe and free and prosperous future. This woman is Madam Miriam Rajavi. And let me add that the Iranian people are rallying behind Mrs. Miriam Rajavi. More and more Iranians understand that Mrs. Rajavi is the right person to lead Iran into a bright future, which would bring long-awaited stability to this region. An administration led by Mrs. Rajavi will bring long-awaited freedom to the great people of Iran. And Mrs. Rajavi believes in freedom of religion in Iran. She believes in freedom of the press in Iran. She believes in freedom of speech in Iran. And she believes in women's rights as a top priority. How many more have to die or sit in prison before something is done? The pressure that is being placed on Iran is not enough, and more pressure is absolutely necessary. I said it before and I'll say it again. If the US and other nations truly want to build a peaceful alliance with Iran, they must sit at the table with Madam Miriam Rajavi and the National Councils of Resistance of Iran. If the United States and our international friends truly want stability in the region, they must sit at the table with Madam Miriam Rajavi. It's Madam Rajavi, who should be speaking on behalf of a free Iran. The United States and the international community must stand against this current regime and stand with Madam Rajavi. You know, Madam Rajavi's 10-point plan will bring an end to executions in Iran. Madam Rajavi's 10-point plan will give way to a democratic and secular republic. Madam Rajavi's 10-point plan will finally bring about gender equality, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion in Iran. The United States and these other nations must actively pursue a relationship with Madam Rajavi to bring about a free Iran. The voices of our Christian and Muslim brothers and sisters that are currently being held in prisons cry out for justice. Let us never forget them. Thank you, and God bless the people of Iran.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miranda. We really appreciate your remarks. And indeed, it is time to embrace the Iranian resistance movement. Ladies and gentlemen, as I prepare to close our program today, I'm going to ask my colleagues to give us one last view from the West all the way to the East. And I'm about to read a joint resolution that was adopted by all of the Iranian American communities who took part in today's virtual conference. Let me reiterate their message that is coming from the Iranian American community in this conference today. Number one, change in Iran is inevitable, and the Iranian American communities stand in full solidarity with the people of Iran, the longest suffering victims of Mullah's regime. We fully support their calls for change of the regime by Iranian people, as evident in 2018, 2019, and 2020 uprisings. Number two, the ruling mullahs who have engaged in domestic repression, terrorism, and nuclear expansion have attempted to exploit the COVID-19 pandemic. Any attempt to accommodate the mullahs' political agenda in the context of global pandemic is an affront to the pro-democracy movement in Iran. Number three, US policymakers must heed the message of the Iranian people who say down with the dictators and isolate the regime of Khamenei, Rouhani, and Zarif. Number four, the future of Iran belongs to those who are willing to pay the price for a free Iran, the resistance units. It is time for the world community to stand on the side of the Iranian people, recognize the right to overthrow this regime, and support the 10-point plan presented by Mrs. Mariam Rajavi for a future Iran. Number five, the Iranian regime's human rights dossier must be referred to the UN Security Council for crimes against humanity, and the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and other officials should be held accountable. Number six, Iranian Americans believe that the maximum pressure policy is the right approach and should be maintained. We call on the United States to ensure UN arms embargo on this regime is never lifted. And number seven, Tehran is already in serious violation of UN Security Council, Resolution 2231. And thus, it is now time for the US to activate the snapback at the UN and ensure that all 6 prior UN Security Council resolutions are reenacted and all of the prior sanctions are reinforced on this regime. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will conclude our program. I want to congratulate all of my colleagues, all of the communities who made this event possible today. Thank you again for holding such a wonderful and successful event. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Absolutely.
من شورشیم چند ساله که خاکم بغض تو سینش حبسه و کینش مثل شعر آره من شورشیم صد میکشی ولی هستم هنوزم و بوزت و مالم به خاک سلت ملت نمیخوانه دین تو بستی ولی خط وصله خط ما بین قلبا و نسله من شورشیم زاده فقرم توی تهرون گور خوابم احباز بی نفس مونده توی تب و تابم تو فکر سخت تو سرکن زهابم بلوچم که توی کپر زیر موج شب در التهابم زاید درود تشنه آبم ولی تو با گله دادی جوابم من شورشیم من شورشیم من شورشیم من با تو نجنگم قطعا اینجا میمیرم اگه با تو نجنگم شاید ولی حقم رو بیشک میگیرم من شورشیم من کار تو هم سرچشمه روشن تقصیرم من روح تهاجم بی‌وقفه حتمیت لحظه تغییرم من تاکسی رونی که بنزینشو بردی اون مال باخته که دار نداشت خوردی اون پول برای که دوستش کشتی اون دختر آبی که حقشو مشتی فسیل بخشی ازش گرفتن و پرش رو چیدن و یهو چریدن و آره ببین منو آره من شورشیم هر اسمم که اسمشو نداد بدون دختر که زیر شکنجه پر زد و رنج آزادی رو برد پر شده حالا داشت میترسی از تکرار صداش آره من شورشیم همه راه ها رو رفتم حریق خونبارش از با هفتم خروش و زکه مادریم که بچهش توی باغچه خونه خاک کرد اینا رو که نمیشه از تاریخ پاک کرد اینا رو که نمیشه از تاریخ پاک کرد من شورشیم اگه با تو نجنگم قطعا اینجا میمیرم اگه با تو نجنگم شاید ولی حقم رو بیشک میگیرم من شورشیم من کار تو هم سرچشمه روشن تقصیرم من روح تهاجم بی‌وقفه حتمیت لحظه تغییرم من شورشیم اگه با تو نجنگم قطعا اینجا میمیرم اگه با تو بجنگم شاید ولی حقم رو بیشک میگیرم من شورشیم من کار تو هم سرچشمه روشن تأثیرم من روح تهاجم بی‌وقفه حتمیت لحظه تغییرم
دوستان خسته نباشین همگی واقعا it was an excellent event. خداحافظی کنی.
کرده اید خم شدیم ما کشته داده ایم کم شدیم ما فکر کرده اید شب شد و تمام بی خیال صبح دم شدیم ما فکر کرده اید از مذاب دار پر شده دهان سبز بوی باد فکر کرده اید حلقه های دار دست راه این گلوی بیقرار فکر کرده اید فکر کرده اید
کور خانده اید ما شروع شورشی در تدارک سپید گرم کوششی کور خانده اید ما طلوع باوریم عاشقانه ایستاده تا به آخرین
جای انتشار بسته میشویم
ما شبیه خوشه های گندمی یک به 100,000 دسته میشویم
باز میکنیم قفل و بستتان نیستی شود تمام هستتان
راه دیگری نمانده جبر ماست پیش میرویم تا شکستتان
فکر کرده اید
خم شده
Proxies.